Welcome to the Relaxed Dog Podcast, the podcast where the dogs are the stars of the show. Welcome to episode 33 of the Relaxed Dog Podcast, sponsored by therelaxeddog.com. Thank you for listening. I am your host, Robert Ober, and I hope that you and your dog are well. My guest this week is Denis Attard, and he's going to be telling us all about Dai. That's D-A-I. But first, in some doggy news, quite some time ago, I made mention to a Belgian Malinois by the name of Kuno, who was fighting alongside the British Special Forces in Afghanistan. He did suffer some life-threatening injuries and was treated by both the US Air Force and Navy, and I think Army as well. And then when he went back to the UK, he was fitted with prosthetic limbs on both his hind legs. He has just been awarded the Dickon Medal, which is the highest award that any animal can receive within the British military. So well done, Kuno. Now over to the Philippines, and in a place called Taguig, a stray dog which had grown up around the local shopping mall was getting a little bit of extra attention, and the mall security was asked to take some action. Apparently they all sort of knew the dog, so what did they do? Drafted him into the security team, of course, so they have now formally adopted him, called him Dog, and apparently they're all working really well together. And now, here's this week's interview. Welcome to the Relaxed Dog Podcast, and my guest today is Denis Attard. How are you, Denis?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you very much for taking some time out to have a chat with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And I understand today we're going to be talking about Dai.
Yes, we are. Dai was my first police dog, so he's definitely worth talking about.
And it's going to be the first police dog for this podcast, so that's going to be an interesting chat, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So as per usual for the people that listen to the show, if you take us back in time to a little bit before you got together and just tell us about the events that led to you getting matched up with him.
Okay, so I joined the police in the UK in 1989, and from a very, very early stage, I decided that I wanted to be a police dog handler, but unfortunately, places didn't come up very often. So I had to work very hard to get noticed, had to work very hard to get my face known so that, when a place came up, that I would be considered for it. So I used to go out on my own shift days off, training with the guys, getting to know people, finding out what the job was about, how the training was done, and basically just looking at what I was going to get myself into. So in 1992, I was fortunate that a place came up. I applied for it, and I was fortunate enough to get it, to get the position. So then I was in limbo for quite a few months while they were waiting to get the course up and running, to find dogs, because they needed 3 dogs to start the course. So they went out and bought the dogs, and then I was invited into the training school to start a familiarisation course in July of 1992.
Okay. Whereabouts in the UK was that?
So I worked for West Yorkshire Police, which covers some quite large inner city areas such as Leeds and Bradford, Halifax, and we're in the western part of of Yorkshire, which is the largest county in the UK and the best, of course. And we just border on the sort of Greater Manchester area as well. So we'd have jobs that went into the Manchester area on occasions. So yeah, north of England in West Yorkshire. I work for West Yorkshire Police, and I'd only been on maybe 3 years, and then in the police before I actually got on dog section, which was pretty much unheard of, really, getting on that quick. But I was just desperate to get on. It's the only thing that I wanted to do, even though I'd been offered a place on CID. I had no interest in that at all. I just wanted to be working with my dog, and I just wanted to do what I'd seen the operational handlers do. So I applied and I got it. I turn up at our training facility, which is a place called Cargate, which is just off the M1 motorway at Leeds. So it's a very centrally based place. Met up with two guys who were going to be on the course with me, with dogs, and the instructor. So the instructor was sort of what I consider to be old school, ex-military, but a very, very, very good dog trainer who knew he basically knew what he was doing. So he'd been out, he'd selected the dogs, because that's what the instructors will normally do. They'll go out and pick the dogs that they want on the course. They take the responsibility for the selection and the training, so everything's down to them. So this particular time, they'd been up to Scotland and picked 3 dogs up from a dealer up there, and there were 3 dogs in the kennel. Inside the compound. He took us through and he stood us all in front of the kennels, and I'm looking in, and he says, Dennis, he says, that's yours. And I looked in at this thing. He told me that it was an 11-month-old German Shepherd, and he was quite a big dog, if I'm honest. Big head. But this dog was throwing itself at the kennel door. It was doing the wall of death inside. And he says, go in and get it. And I said, what, me? You want me to go in and get it? I said, can we not just let it out? He goes, no, go in, put the lead on it and bring it out. Bring him out. So I had to go in and get him, which is... it was a bit scary, really, a little bit frightening when you haven't had contact with a dog such as that. So I went in, and fortunately, when I got in, he sort of realised what the game was, that he was going to go on the lead. And then went in, put the lead on him, and then we had a piece of land where I had to take him for a walk on the lead. And it was just the Apache ride, basically. There was no control, absolutely nothing there at all. This dog was totally in charge of everything. Very, very dominant. And I felt that from our first meeting. The dog was very, very single-minded. And I got the impression that, this dog thought he was in charge. So eventually I'll get him out and let him off the lead, and he goes off and he does what he has to do, and he comes back and has a little sniff at me, and we were just like weighing each other up, and I put him back on the lead, and then I were able to take him back. And then when you start a course like that, you're responsible for the dog. So you're responsible for cleaning him, you're responsible for grooming him, cleaning the kennel, making sure everything that happens with that dog is down to you, is my responsibility. So for the familiarization part, the dog stayed in kennels because what we do, as soon as the dog's been allocated to me and we're paired up, the dog would then come home with me. it'd be I'd transport him in a police vehicle, as it was, back to my home address, and he'd stop with me. The police had built me a kennel in my back garden so that I could house him and look after him there. But he had to stay in the kennels for about 2 weeks while we got to know each other. So then the familiarisation starts, and we're going off in different places, putting the dogs in the vehicles, getting used to the training venues, and like I said, just getting familiar with each other. But it was a real handful, and everybody on the course, you could tell that they were glad that I got the dog.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the other two.
Yeah. One of them was also a bit of an handful, but the guy that had got him bossed him pretty much straight away, and the other guy's dog was extremely amenable and very easy to train, as it turned out. But anyway, I ended up with Dai, and it turned out that I was more than happy with him. I look back and I was more than happy with him. So we get the familiarisation out of the way, and then we're issued with all our kit, and we're starting the course the following Monday, and the dog is coming home with me. So I'd already told my wife, I said, he's a bit of an handful and everything, but you'll love him. Bear in mind that my wife was absolutely frightened to death of dogs and really, really tried to talk me out of going on dogs. So I'd persuaded her. She'd sort of realised that I wasn't going to change my mind and that I am going on dogs. And, one of the things that happens when you go on dogs is that you bring dogs home. So I'm on my way home, we get dropped off, and my wife's waiting. He drags me, I get him out of the back of the vehicle, drags me down the path into the garden and starts running around the garden with me holding him because I didn't want to let him off. And my wife's inside, frightened to come out. And I thought, well, no, we've got to sort this out now. We've got to fix this straight away. I brought him home. You're going to have to get used to him because he's staying type thing. So she stood in the conservatory watching, and she said, I can't come out. It's too big. He's going to hurt. I said, he won't hurt you. He's just a big softie, really. So anyway, she came out and I let him off the lead, and he ran straight to her and attacked her, really. She turned her back. Yeah. She turned her back and he bit her on her shoulder. But she stayed calm, and I thought, what have I just done there? I've just the dog's frightened. The dog's just bit my wife, who's frightened of dogs, and I've got to sell this job to her. Anyway, it sort of got better as the days and the weeks went on, and we went out for walks, and because we don't have any children or anything like that, we spent a lot of time with him, exercising him and getting him fit. And then before you know it, my wife and the dog, they're really getting on very well together. But he is the dog at that stage. It was a real handful, very loud as well. Did a lot of barking, which my neighbours weren't really happy about. So that's another thing that you have to contend with, because we take a police dog home and they're working dogs, and if they hear anybody, they'll let us know that they've heard somebody. And it took a while for the neighbours to work out that having a police vehicle and a police dog on the street was a major advantage, and one that you can't really pay for. So there was nothing happened on our street at all. It was great.
Might lose a little bit of sleep from the occasional barking, but if you do wake up, you don't really have too much to worry about.
That's exactly it. But it all went swimmingly, and we we did the course. So the course was 13 weeks inclusive of the familiarisation. So what we teach the dogs to do on the course, it's all basically we have to have good control over the dogs. So we have obedience first thing on the morning. So I'll do like an hour's obedience training to heel, agility equipment, and then some other control exercises. And then the dogs will go straight in the vehicle, and then we'll be off tracking. So we'd spend a couple of hours tracking, teaching the dogs how to track bad guys away from vehicles and buildings, that type of thing. Then we do a round of bite training. So we'd all, during the bite work exercises, we'd all take it in turns to what we call it catching the dogs. So the dogs will be biting us, we'd be wearing protective equipment, but we'd all take it in turns to catch each other's dogs. My particular dog, no, people didn't look forward to him biting them because he got a very, very good bite, and it's been sort of the tests that have been done on such dogs. So he was about, this dog was maybe about 38 kilos. He's a nice, big, rangy dog with a big head. So with a big head comes a big mouth. And he was biting about 250 pounds per square inch, which hurts. It hurts. If you've ever been bitten by a dog, it really does hurt.
Were you training him to bite a particular target, or?
Yeah. So in the UK, the legislation for biting it's all geared up to the dog obviously being under control, but targeting, should the need arise, they would target the right arm, and it would normally be the lower part of the arm or whatever they could get hold of. It turns out that really, you know, with the dogs that I've had, when I've deployed them and sent them after people in training, they'll just get hold of whatever they can get hold of, because in training we have operationally they'll bite whatever they can, but in training everything's structured, so the dog knows that it's training, the dog knows where to target. But when it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and you've got a guy running away in a t-shirt and jeans and trainers, and he's making good his escape, the dogs will do whatever they have to do to catch these guys. And if they end up taking them on the legs, their ankles, the hands, the back, they'll just do it. They'll just do it. But we will target the arm. So after about 13 weeks, you end up, when you've done all this biting, we'll wear either a bite jacket or a bite sleeve. And at the end of the 13 weeks, you will have this permanent bruise where the dogs have been targeting your like the leading edge of your forearm. But you get used to it. Some dogs bite harder than others. Some will take you down. They'll take you down when they hit you. So if you're running and you're running fast and the dog's running fast, laws of physics tells you that something of that nature is going to happen. So the dog will hit you. He'll be hitting you faster than you're running, which means you're going down. So a lot of people can be injured just by being taken down. But the training has got to be very, very realistic. It becomes more realistic later on. But when we're teaching the dog to bite, we need the dog to bite the lower part of the arm. We need him to bite it and keep a really firm grip. If they keep a firm grip, then the minimum amount of damage will be caused. So what you'll find is that the dogs will hit the target, and if they've been taught to bite properly, the person, the subject, will be in receipt of 4 canine wounds, and they're pretty easy to fix. Sometimes if the guy's fighting and he's really trying to get away, then that can get a little bit messier, because if they're trying to pull their arm away, the dog wants to keep it. So the dog will be more focused in holding on, which will cause more damage. So if people give up, then, well, if people give up in the first instance, if they're warned and they're told to stand still, they should stand still. If they don't stand still, then the dogs are coming. If the dogs are coming, then, you know, there is an exercise that we call the standoff. So if we deploy the dog, there's two things that can happen. The guy keeps on running, the dog will just hit the guy, take him down and hold him until the handler gets there. If the guy decides to give himself up while the dog's on its way and he turns around and he just stands and looks at the dog will put the brakes on and perform what we call a standoff, which is like a hold and bark. So if the guy is giving himself up, the dog won't hurt him. But if he then thinks, oh, the dog's not doing anything, I'm going to go away, I'm going to run away, the dog will bite him and do what it's been sent to do.
From the early sound of it, Dai was very enthusiastic.
Yeah, he did love his bite work. He really did. And with a dog like that, we realised that even though he liked his biting, then with a dog like that, you have to then control that, because otherwise the dog becomes out of control. So you've got to keep this balance of safety, efficiency and control, and everything has got to be absolutely nailed on. And I think when you first joined a job like to be a police dog handler, there's such a lot to consider that once you've done it a couple of times, and I've run dogs on before they've actually started the training, I put all that in place before we actually start the training at a very young age. But because this was my first dog, we just had to hit the ground running. As it turned out, this particular dog, from what I've been told, or what I was told at that particular time, was just an absolute natural. And I ended up being the luckiest person on the course, because that particular dog was just an absolute natural police dog. And I'll explain why a little bit later on.
So he obviously enjoyed the bite work. Was he sort of like well-rounded in his other training, or did he have preferences on?
He just did everything really, really well. And because he did do everything really well, I ended up competing with him as well at a later stage. So for that to happen, we had to complete the course, and then we started our operational duties. So we'd done 13 weeks at the training centre, and then we get paired up with our mentors who look after us for a month. So we'll travel around with those guys for a month, and if there's anything there that is too much for the dog, then your mentor will use his dog, which will be an experienced dog. So you've always got that. You've also always got that sort of fail-safe, so that if there's something that's just too much, we can always use the experienced dog. So we went out, and I think my first shift was a night shift with Dai. My mentor, a guy called Roger, who was my idol, if you like, because I really, really did look up to him. He had great dogs. He'd done great jobs for my shift. And he ended up being a really, really good friend as well. But he took us out, and we had an amazing first week as an operational team. And to have prisoners on your first night is pretty much unheard of. But that particular night, it was a Monday night in a place called Nottingley, which is a place just outside of Wakefield. And it's quite a salubrious area, shall we say. There are some not so very nice people that live there. But having said that, there are people that have lived down there all their lives and have made it a great little place. But unfortunately, there were one or two bad apples that always came up. It was always the same names, always the same people that we were looking for. And on this particular Monday night, we got called out and the school had been broken into. So what would happen is, if they call the dog to come and search the school because the people inside are hiding, it's very unlikely that the patrol officers will actually find the people, because people can really get well hidden, and they could walk through the school and not find them, but the dog can find them very, very easily by the use of the scent picture that a guy that is running away from the police will emit. So we get down there, and there's a full containment on, which means that if there's anybody in there, they can't get out. And that means that I've got to systematically search the school with Dai. It's the first one that I've done, and it's quite a big school, and I've got to think about, there's a lot of things that I've got to think about. I've got to think about my own safety when I get in there, because you can get ambushed inside. Dog handlers have been ambushed inside and beaten up and cut off from the dogs and all that type of stuff. So you've got to think about all of that. But we knew that they were still in there. So, because, you know, that the cameras had picked some noises up inside, so we had to systematically search it. So I knew that they weren't going anywhere. So I go into the school, and what we do is, as you walk through the school, you just put the lights on in the rooms that you've searched, so you know where you've been, because you can end up sort of going around in circles, because, you know, these places, they all look the same. So we'd walk through, I'd search the building, put the lights on, and it was going on and on and on, this search. And I was getting very, very close to the end of the search. And I thought, well, where are they? I just absolutely no idea where they are. We know that they haven't got out. We know that they're here. And I just can't, well, we can't find them. So I actually got to the very, very last room that we were going to search, and the dog was quite tired. So until he's been out for a while, until he's been operationally deployed for any amount of time, his search fitness just wasn't there, and he was going down. He was getting really, really tired. But we walked into the kitchen area, and I put the light on, and as soon as I put the light on, his body language changed totally changed. His back, he became really, really focused. He seemed to regain his fitness back, and I thought, here we go. Well, just sent shivers down my spine just thinking about it. But he was basically, he was in the moment, because what had happened was the scent picture in that room had changed. These guys that had been trying to get away from us, obviously they're emitting all the endorphins and adrenaline, and that's the fear factor. And the dog picked up on that immediately, which is unusual for a young dog, because he was only like 11, 12 months old then. Went in, and we start searching, and as we're searching, the dog starts giving like a bark indication underneath the sink. And I thought, surely there can't be anybody underneath the sink, surely. And I opened up the doors, and how this guy had got under the sink, he was squashed in like a sardine in this underneath the sink. And the dog was just going absolutely mental at this guy. So brought him out, handcuffs, handed him over, and then continued the search, because it said that there were like more than one person in. So we carried on searching the kitchen area, and as he's working round out of sight, I heard the dog sort of yelped or cried out or something. And what had happened was the guy was accessible. The dog could get to him. So the dog had gone in, and the guy kicked the dog straight away. But the dog was so strong that he said, I'm not having that, I'm having you, and bit him on his leg and pulled him out of where he was hiding.
Nice work.
So yeah, it really, really good, because, you know, as a young dog, he defended himself as well, which was excellent. So I went and dealt with the kid, took the dog off the guy, and he got locked up as well. So on my first night out with him, I had 2 prisoners, 1 bitten, and that's how I sort of got my nickname, because I was then like golden. I was like the golden boy then, if you like, because everything that I touched was like sort of turned into gold. You know, it was really, really good. But a fantastic night out for his first one. Really, really good. Very impressive.
Yeah, that's it. It is. I've heard a few different stories where they've different dogs have gone through all the different training regimes, but for one reason or other, the first couple of shifts out and they freeze, or they don't sort of they don't respond to the real life scenario, and then it's some of them fail, and some of them take a little bit of time just to get used to life on the street in real life.
And that's why you've got to know your dog. You've got to know its limitations. And later on, I sent you a picture of Achilles, and I obviously don't mind you sharing that at all. But Achilles was he was a wonderful dog, really, really lovely dog, very, very capable police dog. But the Malinois, in my opinion, is a little bit behind the German Shepherd in maturity stakes. You know, what a Shepherd might have. And again, it's only my opinion. What a Shepherd might have at like 12, 13 months, you've got to wait for sort of another 6 months for that to happen. Again, in my experience, in what I've seen with the Mal, you know. But no, Dai at 11, 12 months, he was he was the real deal. Real good dog.
Excellent. So transpired to bonding more at home, and did things sort of like change a lot in that dynamic?
Yeah, it did. That first dog that I had, he never came indoors. Never came indoors for the first sort of six months. Never allowed him inside because that was our place. You know, that's where we live. He lives outside. We live inside, and he understood that. But the bond built really quick because I wanted to work, and so did he. So every opportunity we had, we trained. Every opportunity, to my mentor. My mentor would sort of get hold of me and say, "We're not training today. He's having a day off. Let him have a day off." But you see, the thing is, I'm Virgo. I don't do days off. It's, you know, if I have the opportunity, I want to train and I want to get the best out of my dog. And, you know, we do that. So the more training we did and the more jobs we had, the bond became much, much better. And with the work as well, because I had the confidence in him, he could obviously sense that I had the confidence in him. That is a strange dynamic. You know, there's been occasions when I've been dealing with things with other dogs, and they've sensed my trepidation, if you like, at the situation that we were in, and sometimes the dogs start thinking, well, we don't want them to think, we want them to act as per training. Mm-hmm. And this particular dog and some of the others that I've had as well, all did that. But Dai, he was just a natural. So very easy for me to find bad guys, to win trophies, to win awards, and all of that sort of stuff just made life really easy for me. I mean, all the awards really were for him, because if the dog could have been, if the dog was able to drive, I would have been out of a job. You know, he was that good.
Take us back a little before you went into those sort of competitions. At what sort of stage was things before that sort of started?
Well, before you can start competing, your dog has got to be operationally sound. And because we'd established that this particular dog was, we started doing like little regional competitions, little day competitions, just to get him up to speed. But what it was good for as well was that if the dog then was competing and winning competitions, it was showing everybody that the dog had got a good standard, and that it was under control, and that he was like a well-rounded dog. There were some dogs at that time that would never, ever, ever have been taken out of a vehicle at some of these events. But this particular dog, although he was a bit sharp, I had to keep him away from people because ultimately he was always going to defend me. He was quite well behaved. He was quite well behaved.
So when you say competitions, what style was it? I don't know, was it like Schulzen back then, or was it a different variation of that? Or
yeah, it was the police training model, which was established by by ACPO, which was the Assistant Chief Police Officers Association. They established a standard, so the dogs were assessed against that standard, and we competed at that standard, that program of training. So for the one-day shows, we'd do a round of obedience and agility, and that would be normally in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we'd do a round of criminal work. And then you'd receive marks for your obedience work, and you'd receive marks for your criminal work. There would be an obedience trophy and a criminal work trophy, and then an overall trophy for winning the competition. That was a one-day show, and then we had regional and national trials where you were competing against other forces. So we'd compete within our region, and there'd be maybe about 20 dogs competing, and the best 4 dogs would then go and represent that region at national police dog trials, which is it's what anybody that works police dogs or competes with police. Not everybody wants to compete, by the way. I just had an affinity with it now. I'm quite competitive, and I had a good dog, so I wanted to win. But I would, once you've won the regionals or come in the top 4, you then go forward to the nationals, which is the peak, if you like, of competing at police dog level. And I was fortunate to qualify 3 times for nationals. Unfortunately, I never won it, but the dog that I would have won it was my last police dog, and unfortunately he had a stomach torsion a week before the competition. So although I was hotly tipped to win that one, unfortunately the dog was ill. But no, the competition side of it has always been extremely important to myself, because that's how you can show people, when you're showing your colleagues and your friends and members of the public your standard, that is how people will judge you. So I always wanted the best obedience. I always wanted to be I always wanted to win. And that's it. I just wanted to win. I always wanted to make sure that I caught the bad guys, and I always made sure that I had a good opportunity to win the trophies and the pots as well.
Nice. So to balance a little bit, how was Dai? What were his favourite games? Not necessarily competition style or training games, but do you have just the games to play for fun?
Yeah, he liked. If we were playing ball in the garden or something like that, most of their energy, if I'm honest, is either being exercised, training, or working. That tends to be their life. As regards games and things like that, we spent a lot of time exercising and relaxing and doing all that type of stuff. But his main aim in life was to go out in the van and work. Whether it was training or working. So that was his biggest game, if you like. That's the thing that he really did enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Did he ever, did you guys ever then at different stages have team up with other handlers to work different cases, or is he more of a solo dog, or did he work in a combined effort in different times?
He didn't really like other dogs. It was funny about the dogs that I had to be very careful about who I could run the dog with, because as soon as you get 2 police dogs fighting, there's 2 things that are going to happen. Either 1 or 2 of them are going to get injured, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that at all. So I sort of kept him away from other dogs, but I exercised him with my partner's dog, Roger's dog. They were best mates, and we had a place called Shepard, which was a private piece of land, and we used to do what we called the daffodil run, because there was just this track that run through this beautiful copse of trees and grassed area, and only us could go. We were the only people that were allowed to go, and in springtime there was just daffodils everywhere, just like perfect, absolutely perfect. And these two dogs would just run themselves into the ground. So that is something that they really did enjoy. They really enjoyed each other's company, those two dogs. But he didn't like many dogs, if I'm honest.
Oh, nice. Did you have any sort of like outstanding personality traits, or weird personality traits that you'd say?
Yeah, never stopped barking. Never. I was told that was down to his exuberance. So one of the trainers who was helping me with the dog to train a few things, getting him ready for competition and what have you, the dog would just sit and bark just constantly, just giving me a headache, really. But as a trait, yeah, that's the one. He was extremely free. He was really, really free speaking, which for a police dog is ideal, because to get dogs to bark, sometimes if you can't get them to bark, then they can't perform some of the exercises that we need them. So if they go out and find somebody and they're inaccessible and we need to know where they are, the dog will tell us exactly where the guy is by indicating, by means of barking, where that person is. You know, it's not like it's not like Skippy will like run back and say he's fallen down the well or something like that. The dog will just sit and bark until such times that whoever it is being dealt with. But yeah, it was just his barking that was a bit of an issue.
Nice. As far as, say, the tracking, is there any of like memorable cases where he's had a long track for a particular person and you've ended up getting him in the end?
Yeah,
a challenging one.
I've had a lot of tracks, especially with that particular dog. Tracks from vehicles and buildings over open land, you know, up to, I had one from a stolen tractor that went on for about maybe 2 miles over fields until we caught up with the guy. The guy was just exhausted, as were we, when, you know, like when we found him. We were filthy because it had been wet and everything. But tracking jobs, he was excellent, and he was also excellent on hard surface as well. So I'd specifically trained him to search on tarmac and concrete, because that was part of the competition schedule. And he was very, very good at hard surface tracking. So if we were out on a housing estate and somebody bailed out of a vehicle and run off, then I was really confident that I could turn up and he'd get his nose down. And sometimes after a track, he'd work that hard and his nose had been working that hard to get as close to the track as possible, that it would graze the bottom of it would graze the tip of his nose, because it being so close to the track, you know, like wanting to find the scent of the guy, and he'd been working that hard that there'd be like a little graze and like a little bit of blood there when he'd done that. But that sort of just told you what sort of dog he was. But a lot of guys, you know, a lot of dog handlers will turn up at jobs like that and not even, you know, and know that their dogs won't have the ability to track somebody like that. But my dog did, and that's why I got a lot of prisoners in places like housing estates and places like that, where it is really difficult.
Mm-hmm. What sort of an average workload? And I know it is hard to sort of say, but like think a lot of people don't know how much the dog is sort of like sitting, waiting in the kennel or at home or in the car to go out and when you're called on a job. So with your time with Dai, what sort of like an average sort of like time does he actually get out to work?
Yeah, well, police work by its very nature is unpredictable. You can be chasing yourself round, never stopping from going to finishing, and then you can go out and then nothing will happen at all during that night. And I've even had full night weeks, which are 7 shifts of 10-hour shifts that we've had nothing, whether it be for sort of weather reasons or I don't know. It's just one of those. It's just one of those things you never, with police work, you never know what's happening. You never know what's around the corner. You just absolutely just don't. And that's why I loved it so much, because the unpredictability of it and the the diversity of it is amazing. But what we would do is nights is a brilliant time for training. So if it is quiet, we'd go out and do some training. So we'd meet up, and my colleague. So what we'd do is we'd have this our working area, and we'd split it in half. I'd work one half, and he'd work the other half. And if there was nothing happening, we'd meet up in the middle to suitable venue, do some training, so that we were both ready to respond if we had to. So, yeah, there are downtimes. There are times when there's nothing to do, but what I would do as well is I would just carry on normal police work. So if there's nothing happening, I'd be just out stopping vehicles, stopping and speaking to people, checking premises. Even a walk. You can turn a walk into checking temporary unoccupied premises, even though you're just walking your dog. So we'd always be doing something, because like 10 hours to do nothing it's a long time. Mm-hmm. It's a long time. It can be boring, but invariably, nights were busy, and then days would be just doing normal police work, because later on I also had a narcotics detection dog as well. So I'd be working one of them, but there'd always be an opportunity to work one of them, if not both, on the same job. So we could go to a warrant, and we could do a knock on the door, and if the guy kicks off, the dog's there to deal with him if we have to. So at that time, we used dogs like that, whereas dogs aren't used like that now, because police officers have tasers, and tasers can cut a lot of that out as well. So the use of dogs is like narrowed down just like a little bit because of taser. But we'd do the warrant, I'd secure it with this particular dog, put him away, and then get my drugs dog out, and then I'd do the search. So as a dual handler, we're really good value to our divisions, because definitely. We could do, like if the guides had stopped a vehicle that had got a drugs marker on it, then I'd just turn up and do the vehicle with my little drugs dog. And yeah, that was a good time as well. I don't know what Dai thought about it, but
so you mentioned he got a kick on his first shift. Did he suffer any other injuries on the job that you can recall?
He did, and one of them actually ended his career, unfortunately, because we talk about, he wasn't a gift dog, but he wasn't an expensive dog. I think he cost our force about £500, but he did have a few niggly injuries, like muscular pulls. He seemed to suffer a lot with stomach problems, but that I think was down to an allergy to the food that he had. But anyway, we did sort that out. But yeah, he picked up a few injuries along the way. At one time, I did have my own plastic surgeon at the local hospital, because what had happened with his tooth, he sheared a tooth. He picked up a metal hammer in training, and it sheared his tooth. But what that gave him was, it was like a jagged edge, which made the bite. It was like a knife. It was like, because it was so sharp.
Yep.
It had cut like a knife. So when it bit anybody and they went to hospital, the guy there, he knew which dog had actually done it.
Yep.
So he knew it was my dog because he could tell that from the bite marks and that it were him. But no, that's yeah. But the one that did end his career, unfortunately, was after it was like not a nationwide pursuit, but this particular car had been chased for 20, 30, 40 miles by police. And anyway, it ended up in our area, our force area, and the guy jumped out, left the vehicle and ran across fields. So I turned up with Dai, picked the track up straight away. Beautiful spring morning, moisture on the ground. I could actually see where the guy had run some of the way. So we went across ploughed field, went across crop fields, and it was just going on. And this guy was really on his toes trying to get away. So then I got to an area that was an old disused railway track. So it was like a cinder track where the railway lines had been. So they'd been removed, and it ended up just being like a footpath, a really nice footpath. So the guy had run across, he'd run across that and then into the undergrowth. So the way that the dog was tracking, as we got closer, as my experience of this particular dog was that when we were getting closer, his body language started to change. He was readying himself to deal with whatever we were going to track to, and I could tell his body language was changing. And I thought, this guy's here. He's actually here. But we're going through these like reeds, and the reeds are they were actually taller than I was. So the dog was tracking, and I could see where the guy had broken through the reeds and made his escape. So the dog starts tracking, and then all of a sudden he just stopped dead. Stopped dead in his tracks, and I couldn't see why he'd stopped dead. And I'm trying to encourage him on, because I know, and I'm thinking, what's happened here? I just couldn't work out what had happened. So as I'm pushing through the reeds, the dog, I motioned with the dog, with Dai, for him to go forward. Then the next news is the dog falls with the tracking line running through my fingers, and then there was a splash. So as I cleared the area, I could see that the area was a well, and it turned out it was a steam train. It was for when they had the steam trains, and these places would be full of water for the engines, and so it was empty. And at the bottom were rocks and water. So the dog had fallen into the well, but he was swimming, and he was treading water inside. But I could see that he were injured. I could see that he was hurt. The only way that we could get him out, I had to get the fire service to come and help us winch him out. But as soon as he saw the fire service guys, he started barking while he was swimming, because he's saying, right, you stay away from my dad, what are you doing up there, type thing. And he started being a little bit protective. So they wouldn't go down. I had to be winched down myself, because the dog would definitely have bitten the fire service guy. So I went down, got him, and brought him back up, checked him out, and he was walking about. He was walking about fine. It was great, but I could see that his back was pinched, And what had happened was he'd had 3 of his lumbar vertebrae had fused together over time, and he'd broken the calcium buildup, which was obviously causing him a lot of grief. Anyway, it turned out that when I had him all x-rayed and looked at and everything, that was his career over, really. And I made the decision to retire him. The vet said he could go on a bit further if he wanted. I said, no. This dog's done everything for me. I'm going to make a decision for him now. So he was 7 when that happened. And he'd probably got another 2 years left in him. But anyway, that brought that to a close, unfortunately. But that's what ended his career. And what had happened was the guy had fallen in there himself and had been stuck in there. And what had happened was his scent had pooled within there, and the dog couldn't work it out. And I couldn't see it, and he couldn't see it, but I could tell that he'd sensed something. Anyway, as we'd moved forward, he was in front of me, and unfortunately he fell into it. You just couldn't see it. It was just too dense, and all the reeds had grown around. Anyway, it's hindsight's a wonderful thing, I know, but it was just one of the things. So the guy had fallen in, and then managed to get out the other side. And I'd given the patrol officers a direction of travel. They were able to pick him up about half a mile in front of us, because obviously we weren't going anywhere after that. But he got locked up, absolutely no problem at all. So it got resolved. But unfortunately, after that, I lost my position on dog section because of the policy that we had then. We had a 10-year position. A 10-year policy, which meant that as soon as the dog wasn't operational, I had to go back on patrol. So even though I knew I had to go back on patrol, I made the decision for that dog because I didn't want to ever put him in a position whereby his health wouldn't allow him to protect him or me, himself or me. So I thought, right, let's have you retired and you can come home with me. And that's exactly what I did.
So, got to ask now, how was his transition into retirement at home?
His transition into retirement was absolutely remarkable, and one that I can't describe, because what I did was because he was suffering with spondylosis then, with arthritis, I brought him indoors to keep him nice and warm and look after him. And when anybody ever came to my house, he was never out. He would never meet anybody. I used to keep him. My advice, the advice from my partner was to keep him away from everybody, keep him suspicious, keep him edgy. And that's what I did with that particular dog. When I retired him, he went everywhere with us. I took him to my wife's mum's, and he just relaxed so much. It was just brilliant. It's as though really had been switched off, and as though he knew he was retired. He'd done his bit, but yeah, the transition into his retirement was, as I said, remarkable. I would never have thought that dog would have done that, but he did.
Lovely. That's so nice to hear. And I'm guessing he enjoyed sleeping inside as well.
He did. He enjoyed sleeping indoors. He had his own spot in the kitchen, and I also had a pet dog as well, and they got on really, really well together, which was nice. So that were a nice little bit of socialisation for him. But no, he did enjoy his time.
Okay. So who became his home buddy? The other pet dog. Was there much of an age difference as well with that, or?
Yeah. In fact, my pet dog, it was a Doberman cross. I think it was maybe just he probably like a couple of years older. But Jake, he wasn't really precious about anything. He wasn't territorial or anything. He just accepted it, and they got on really well together. Both lived in the kitchen, and no, it was just lovely to see. Yeah, I think Jake actually enjoyed it. You know, you could tell there wasn't any issues at all there.
Mm-hmm. Just a couple of distinguished gentlemen enjoying the latter stages of life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, nice. It's a question I ask everyone to complete the sentence, and I'm probably not going to get an answer from you from the first half of his life, but maybe after he retired. So, I can't believe my dog ate
a tin of white gloss paint.
Sorry, what?
A tin of white gloss paint.
Oh, you have to explain a bit more on that one.
Okay, so when he'd retired, and it was shortly before he died, I think. We were building a house, and we were doing all the decorations and everything. So this house had got a nice garden and everything, and a lovely high fence. And so he was out there. He'd be out in the sunshine, and he'd just do wherever he wanted. And he'd come into the garage. And so on this particular day, I got all my paint out and everything, brushes, rollers, and everything, all ready to go. And I'd stirred this tin of gloss white paint, and I'd left the top off it, and I went upstairs and came back. And when I came back, his muzzle from his nose up to his eyes was just covered in white paint. And I just looked, and I'm thinking, what have you actually done there? And then I looked down at the paint. The paint was all over the floor, and he'd probably eaten about a quarter of a litre of this paint.
Ooh.
And yeah. So I just couldn't believe that he'd eaten that. He was quite a greedy dog, but he'd eaten that. So on my day off, I have to rush him to the vets. So I take him to the vets. So I take him to the vets, and every time I take him to the vets, it's a battle to get him in there. He's extremely combatant, shall we say. But when it came to the vets, it were a massive problem taking him to the vets. And anyway, eventually we get him there. They had to sedate him, and they kept him for 2 days. And they had to, and it was on a drip and all of this, and they had to clean him out and stomach pump him and everything. So there was no long-lasting damage done to him, other than it cost me £650.
Thankful, yeah.
Which it cost me, that tin of paint cost me a lot of money. But yeah, no, I can't believe he did eat that. If I'm honest,
yeah. I thought after the discipline of being, a working dog, and I've spoken to a couple other people that have like competition dogs, and they don't touch anything off the ground that they're not supposed to. But then sometimes,
well, he was just relaxing and just fancied it. So he fancied it and he ate it, and the rest is history. But yeah, when you actually wrote that, when you told me about that, that just came straight up. So I have no problem with answering that one.
So you mentioned he's not a fan of the vet. What about grooming wise?
Yeah, he didn't like being groomed either, especially his tail. Couldn't touch his tail. That wasn't allowed. He would not let you touch his tail. Everything else, he put up with that. He put up with it. I'm not saying he loved it, but he put up with it. But he could never touch his tail. No chance.
Thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to share a little bit about Dai. It sounds like an absolutely awesome dog. That was just
he was
the right dog put into the right situation and teamed up with the right person, from what I can hear.
Yeah, he was, and I was very, very fortunate. And one thing that I will say is that if there are any dog handlers out there that are listening, and that they're embarking on their own careers as dog handlers, if you get a good dog first up, and I got what I would consider to be the the perfect police dog as my first dog because he really did look after me. That dog is always going to be very, very difficult to replace. And I think if I could go back and like sort of do things again, I would try and manage my expectations. People told me about, they told me that would happen, but you never know until you're given a dog that, unfortunately, I was given a dog that wasn't as good as Dai, and I had to keep him for a while, and he just wasn't up to it. But, you've got to get the best out of them when you can, but they're all different. Every single dog has got different qualities. They can bring something different, but I was very, very fortunate that he was my first one, and yeah, he was mine, and nobody else's. So yeah, he was really, really good.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much again, Denis. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you get notified as soon as the next episode comes out. Also, why not tell a friend? Until next week, stay safe and remember, your dog is family.